From Geppetto Studios in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, your home for inclusive, positive geek culture, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host.
Yes, drinking our Zimas, cruising around in our PT Cruisers, and not buying girls' drinks.
Brad Mendenhall.
Hey kids, it is episode 260 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. Jarf returns for a new edition of Crossing the Streams. We spend a surprising amount of time talking about Desperate Housewives. Was not expecting that. Anywho, Katie has a question.
What fictional character do you most relate to, and why?
That's a good one. From the world of comic books, the first thing that comes to mind is Peter Parker, Spider-Man, because the way he was always presented as bookish, shy, not having the easiest time expressing himself. But then when he changed into Spider-Man, he would be gregarious and jokey, and I think that there's a part of that where you put me into... I just had a conversation about this, and I've talked about I perform in dinner theater. It's a picture of a show that I did for Ovation Dinner Theater. It was a picture of me with like a big smile and in the center of a group, and somebody commented that I never smile in pictures, and it's like, yeah, I never smile in pictures. Like Brad Mendenhall doesn't smile in pictures. But Father Abraham Goldstein from the play Joey and Gina's Italian Comedy Wedding, he does smile and tell bawdy jokes and talks to people that he doesn't know and can be the life of the party. I have a thing that a lot of people who are naturally introverted have, where you put them in a situation where all of a sudden they get comfortable and they can be gregarious and outgoing and all those things. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Another is the main character. I believe the character's name was Scat from the book by Max Barry Syrup, who was, I guess it's who I would want to be. Somebody who could be occasionally clever or insightful. It was a really good novel. It's one of my favorites. And Scat, the main character, would spend so much time like in his own head, getting in his own way, and then just would have these moments of clarity where he could be really clever, inventive, or whatever. And I guess there's something about that spoke to me. Those are the two, Spider-Man and Scat from Syrup. Syrup, which was turned into a movie, sort of like a direct-to-video thing, starring Amber Heard before she broke through. And Amber Heard, of course, is in the news a lot lately because of the trial with Johnny Depp. So it all ties together. How's your work?
Work is good. It's an exciting time because we are making the transition back to doing in-person events, which of course comes with a lot of special complications because I work, as your listeners may remember, for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and people with cystic fibrosis are immunocompromised. So we've had to take the extra precautions all throughout the pandemic that people who are immunocompromised have to take. And now, fortunately, the situation with COVID has improved to a point that we and the community feels comfortable, at least some people feel comfortable gathering in person. So it'll just be interesting to see what that looks like and feels like. I've really had some great experiences improving on our ability to connect people virtually, but doing in-person events is how I got started with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So will just be exciting to add that to what I do.
I don't know if I ever told you this anecdote, and it was probably 2 years ago. We were just taking a little like 4-day trip down to Lewes, Delaware, just to be by the beach. And we were staying in a cabin in a campsite, and it had a pool with a lifeguard and this delightful young woman, probably 15, 16 years old, that my son Logan, who was 8 at the time, was very taken with, and he was flirting with her like crazy. He just was like walking up to her and batting his eyes at her. I don't know how the conversation happened, but she revealed that she was living with cystic fibrosis. From knowing you and from knowing other friends of the show who work for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, or there's some people peripheral to Cosmic Geppetto world, they're dealing with it. So I sort of curse with knowledge. It's like, so I know a little bit about what this young woman who was really engaging and very likable and was so sweet to my son. And that's sort of the way to win me over, is like, are you nice to my kids? It's like, oh, then you're great. Then you're fantastic. And then just knowing it's like, oh my gosh, okay. I know the challenge, some of the challenges that this woman is going through and the work that being done by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So I'm like, do you know about the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation? Do you work with them? And I'm trying to remember if she knew of you guys. Probably the last thing she wanted was just some yutz at the pool telling her about the illness as if she doesn't know about it. And I wasn't trying to do that. I just wanted to make sure that she was aware of your group. It's always such a fine line, because I spend a lot of time trying not to mansplain, or in this case, cystic fibrosis splain to the young woman. But I know you guys are always doing such cool stuff and important work. So I was like, I got to make sure, because if I don't say it, then I'm going to like be kicking myself for the rest of the day that I didn't mention my familiarity with you guys.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, man. This isn't necessarily the point of your story, but it is something that I'm curious about. So Logan, is he more of a young version of you or more of a young version of Heather?
He's part of me, because with me, I can be outgoing and gregarious and the center of attention when I'm really comfortable. And I have to be sort of in my element. So it's always the weird thing where when I remember once talking with our friend, Katie, the honey badger herself. And I forget what the context of the conversation, but it just says like, oh, that's hard for me to do because I'm shy. And she just looked at me. It's like, you are not shy. It's like, I'm not shy when I'm around you and when I'm around like people that I'm comfortable with. It's like when I'm in a situation where I'm not, you can't drag a word out of me. So it's funny. I have 2 boys, Chase, who is the silently watching everything and sort of taking it all in, but not really interjecting himself. And then there's Logan, the when I'm comfortable and has to be like the center of attention and the jokey one and doesn't care who's watching. And hey, the more people watching, awesome. And so it's funny like that, like I just been split between the 2 boys.
I just asked because I was trying to picture this, who I picture as a young otter trying to flirt with a girl almost twice his age. And it seems like a disaster, but the way that you describe it, it sounds like he was being pretty adorable.
Well, listen, there's things you could, he's really cute and he's very sweet, and there's just, you can get away with stuff when you're 8 to 10 years old that if you try, like he's won over young women. He plays soccer. I gave out ice cream sandwiches to the kids after one of the games, and the referee was this high school sophomore. Logan's like, I'm going to give the ref an ice cream sandwich. It's like, you're going to what? And he's like, and he grabs the sandwich and he walks over to her and he hands it. He's like, I want you to have this sandwich. And she was just like, oh, you're the cutest thing ever. I was like, yeah, Logan, just remember, when you're in your 20s, if you try to win over a young woman with an ice cream sandwich, you will get arrested. These things work so much better when you're 8 and adorable than when you're in your 20s. And
so Lil Logan's got game.
He has so much game. And this will be the last story. He came home one day And he was on the bus, and there was again, he was probably 8. And there was a 13, 14-year-old girl on the bus. And they came home and was like, oh, yeah, I was talking with Tori. And I was like, Tori. And we knew Tori's family. It's like, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, I got her phone number. I was like, you did what now? Reached into his pocket, pulled out a piece of paper with, sure enough, Tori's cell phone number. I was like, huh, good for you. Yeah, it was brutal for me asking a girl for her number. Like, that was really hard, especially post-college. Like, it was hard for me to, like, get that nerve together to ask, because, and I haven't been dating for decades now, but it was very hard for me to, like, because I knew as soon as you ask for the number, then you've blown your cover. She knows you're interested. And that was always such a vulnerable place for me. And I also know it's been even longer for you since you were in the dating scene, but that was really tough for me. Were you good at that?
Oh, no. It took me a lot to psych myself up to ask a girl I liked for her number. It was a multiple day campaign and lots of talking to my friends and getting, they would sort of be inboxing, you know, you have the corner guy giving you the water and patching up your cuts and like
cutting your eye if you need to.
Yes, exactly. So that's the scene of me getting ready to ask a girl I like for a number.
2 things I was not good at. One was asking a number, but I did that several times. The other thing that I was really bad at, during the entire time I was single, I never bought a girl a drink at a bar. I just could not. It's like, oh, that's just, I was not one to, it's like, oh, there's an attractive girl across the bar, I think I'll send her a drink. I never did that. And I hung out at bars with female friends. I remember my sister saying, it's like, yeah, if I'm at a bar for more than like 20 minutes and no one's bought me a drink, me and the girls are leaving because there's no point. I was like, it's that easy? And then I went out with her and her friends, and it was like a couple guys, a couple girls, and I'm talking with my sister at the bar, and all of a sudden, sure enough, there are like 2 drinks showed up in front of her and her friend, and then she looks over and she's like waves to the guys. They're like, hey. And I was like, it's that common? It would never occur to me to do that.
That's pretty wild. I'm in the same boat as you. I've always thought of buying a drink for someone in a bar as something that happens in movies, not in real life. I know that people do it, but it definitely has. And this is back to your point of, I started dating the woman who is now my wife in college. So I've been out of the game for a long time, but no, there was never a point that I was in a bar and I thought, oh, I'm going to buy her a drink. What drink should I buy her? What's the cool? No, it's just, that's wild, man.
I would completely screw it up. It's like, what drink should I get her? It's like, and then she's like, hey, the guy across the bar just sent you a Mountain Dew for some reason.
Right.
I think he overthought it. Maybe you look tired and you want to make sure you had energy. He's bad. He's bad at this.
Or to really tell tales out of school from knowing you from your college days, it would be, who the sent me this Zima?
Yeah, what the hell was that with the Zima?
You tell me. You tell me.
Folks, first off, a lot of you don't even remember Zima, but it's one of those things that was briefly cool for a 6 to 9 month period of time, and then it became a punchline. And also, I wasn't much of a beer drinker, probably because we were broke college kids, so I wasn't drinking good beer. So if you drink a lot of Keystone Light, all of a sudden Zima seems great. But it was very popular for a period of time. It's like, okay, Zima, and it was a little sweet. It wasn't too bitter. It was what my palate could handle. But it's also just one of those things where there was good marketing for the first 6 to 9 months, so people bought it. And there's just things that become jokes, but you forget they weren't jokes for a while. This is coming from a guy who drove a PT Cruiser for 6 years, and the PT Cruiser was really cool car for the first 6 to 9 months, and then everyone just realized it was basically a Dodge Neon with a somewhat interesting body on it. And it's like, oh, it's actually not much of a car. Now that's a punchline. But I remember when I got that car, people would actually like honk at me in the street and give me a thumbs up because I had the new sort of different looking car. All right, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Jarf, we are here for the first time in a long time to do a Crossing the Streams.
Cross the streams.
I love this plan. I'm excited to be a part of it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it, especially now that we have set the table by establishing ourselves as two very, very cool guys who are definitely well positioned to give takes on some of the latest in media today.
Yes, drinking our Zimas, cruising around in our PT Cruisers, and not buying girls' drinks.
Right. Exactly.
I really only have one streaming thing that I want to talk with, and it's because it's obvious. As we are talking, we're just a couple days removed from the second episode of Moon Knight on Disney+.
Yes, we are.
Do you watch shows like Moon Knight, Mandalorian, whatever, as they come out, or do you wait? Some people I know wait until they're all out and then watch them all at once.
Typically, I watch things when they come out. I'm not much of a binger. I appreciate when a show is released weekly just because it lets me parse it out, and also then there is that extra suspense of waiting a week for the next episode. But it just happens that I haven't seen Moon Knight yet, just because I'm pretty into some other shows that I'm watching. I'm marginally interested in it. It was never a character that I had a strong connection to. I do like Oscar Isaac, but I don't care about anything from the first couple episodes being spoiled, so feel free to talk about it, spoiler included.
I was modestly interested in Moon Knight. Moon Knight seemed like a character in Marvel that would probably be pretty fun to write. It's got to be hard to write Daredevil, Spider-Man, Wolverine, Fantastic Four, Captain America, whatever, because you're probably handcuffed in the stories you can tell. They are very set. There's a lot of expectations. They were always sort of flagship brands. Moon Knight was a character who was always popular enough to get another series. I mean, feels like there's probably been 10 Moon Knight series in my lifetime. Because he was never really popular, really just mostly an interesting character design, you could sort of get away with a lot. I found that interesting sometimes. I don't think I ever bought an issue of a Moon Knight comic, however. I did read a couple of issues of West Coast Avengers when he was a member of that team. Like, I saw a couple guest appearances. I remember him being in a Punisher annual once. Could be somewhat interesting. Decent design. Then you hope with the series, and I've seen the first 2 episodes, pretty good. Again, he's not Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man. He's not a linchpin of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so they can sort of do some wacky stuff with him. Oscar Isaac is brilliant. It's awesome that Marvel got into the Oscar Isaac business, because he's a really cool actor who deserves much better than Apocalypse in X-Men for his comic book stuff.
So you mentioned that you like the design. Do you happen to know who created the character's look? Because I always associate Moon Knight with Bill Sienkiewicz, because I did buy a couple of the original Moon Knight series years ago, and I never connected that much with the character, but I did really like the look, and a big part of that was just being a fan of his style, and he would always create these really distinct things where he would fan out his cloak and it would make a moon shape, and he had cool moon based gadgets. And so I've just kind of Do you happen to know if he created the character or what's the origin there?
First appeared in 1975, which is crazy. This is a character that's been around for 47 years. He appeared in an issue of Werewolf by Night. So the creators are listed as Doug Moench, Moench, and Don Perlin. I think Don Perlin was the artist. Now, his first ongoing, Doug Moench, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it, was the writer, and Bill Sienkiewicz was the artist on basically the first ongoing. So I'm sure it was probably a thing where, and then Sienkiewicz was probably the guy who really gave him the look. It was Don Perlin and Al Milgrom were the artists who created him, but I think he's perfect for Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz is, first off, he's great with characters with capes because he'll do some freaky stuff with a cape. That white costume at night can be really great in his hands.
You know how sometimes you start off the episode with just a little clip that you pulled out of context? He'll do some freaky stuff with the cape. There's your sound bite right there.
That should be it. Yeah, that should be it. You laugh. That might be the hardest thing to do in these episodes when I'm editing. Because I'll get really close to the end of editing, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't pull any clips. So if you hear any more stuff that'd be great out of context, be sure to call it out.
Okay, will do. The first two episodes, you said that you liked them, and you said Oscar Isaac is great. What about the visual aesthetic? Do they reinterpret it in some way? Does it seem like they were really inspired by those original comics or other interpretations? Or is that anything that jumped out?
The thing that struck me, it's sort of a living costume, which is funny when I try to think of what reminds me of a living costume. The closest I could come into that lousy Spawn movie from the 90s.
Yeah, I was thinking of The Mask too.
It works fine because he's an eerie supernatural hero, so that works okay. The thing that doesn't work is the bad guy incorporates Egyptian demon dogs that are CGI'd. And I'm watching it as like, well, they just look like every other Marvel sort of creepy looking CGI demon dog creature that they've had. They had him in the Avengers movies, in Infinity War. They don't have any impact.
I'm thinking of Rocket saying, "Die, space dogs."
The design is so indescript that it just could be the same thing. They use the same sort of creatures in the first Hellboy movie. And I just think it's like, this would work better and it could be more haunting if you just had really good stuntmen wearing creepy masks. And it would work just as well. And I'm thinking about how well that worked in Angel and Buffy, where they just would have guys with creepy makeup and it would be really effective. You don't need to use CGI with everything.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm liking it. I will continue watching it. It's only 6 episodes, and Oscar Isaac is very good. And one of the things with Moon Knight was he always had multiple personality disorder, and they're playing that interestingly. When you have a chance to watch it, I recommend doing so.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. I was actually trying to think of what's coming. You mentioned our mutual friend, Katie, the honey badger herself, earlier. I was trying to think of what's coming down the Marvel River that might warrant getting the band back together. Maybe the next Doctor Strange. What do you think?
Love and Thunder, that's this year, right?
I forget. And it's also constantly shifting. I tend to plug up my ears and cover my eyes whenever they announce a release date, unless it's like coming out next month.
Right now, Love and Thunder is scheduled for July 8th of this year.
Oh, nice. You probably just jinxed it. It's going to be pushed to 2023 now.
I think when it's that close, they're pretty dialed in. Well, let's not kid ourselves. We got to get Katie to talk about Love and Thunder.
Yes, absolutely.
because she's well known for her love of Chris Hemsworth. Also, that could be the Thor movie that ticks her off because Natalie Portman's going to be Thor. You know, we'll see how that goes with her. So it could be fun. I mean that could make her madder than when Thor was chubby in Endgame.
Is she not a fan of Jane Foster Thor, or is it a Natalie Portman thing?
I think it's just no one should take Chris Hemsworth's place. She just wants as many shots of Thor holding the hammer and looking cool with the wind blowing his hair.
Well, let's not put words in her mouth.
That's true. I'm just saying. I'm hope there's a possibility.
You're hoping for the drama.
I am. I can't help myself. It'll make for a good podcast. You've brought some good stuff to talk about for this Crossing the Streams. So where do you want to start?
The natural transition would be to talk about Gunpowder Milkshake next, because that is the most of the ones that I picked comic book movie adjacent. Have you seen it?
I have.
Nice.
I have slowly, without realizing, have come to crush pretty hard on Karen Gillan.
Oh, Karen Gillan is so cool.
She's so cool. She has such neat range. And also, she's very likable and personable in interviews. And she's great. And she's great in this. The range of stuff she can do. Sadly, you look at the Jumanji movies, to the Marvel stuff, to this. But she's also played, I forget the name of the TV show, but she was on a TV show where she was sort of like a Paris Hilton-esque socialite, leaning into her natural accent. And she was playing a great romantic lead who you shouldn't like, but you sort of do because she's so charming.
Yeah, I saw that show. Selfie, it was called.
Right, yeah. It wasn't nearly as successful as it should have been, and it's one of those you go back and it's like, oh, this was actually sort of great. And then Carla Gugino, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. I've always liked her. I remember liking her on a very old show that she was only on for the first season, the Michael J. Fox show Spin City. And she was the female lead on that for the first season. And she was great. And another actress with really great range, who I think people sort of caught on to a little late. Like, she's been doing great stuff for 20, 30 years. And it feels like it's only been in the last 4 or 5 that people really seem to appreciate how wonderful she is.
And that's one of the cool things about this movie, because this movie is stacked with actors who are in that same category as Carla. Michelle Yeoh, Angela Bassett. People, if there was more justice in the world, would have had as prolific a career as Tom Cruise, because they're amazing and they've been amazing for decades. But there just aren't as many opportunities for women.
Right. I mean, it's like, it feels like you could only have a female-led action property around the era of Buffy and Alias that started then. That was just TV shows. They wouldn't have an action franchise with a female lead until they're still trying to make it happen. And it still stalls out at the smallest sign that things might not work out. I mean, Catwoman happened. That suddenly convinced decision makers that they can't have a female-led action movie because people won't go to a female-led superhero movie because it stars a woman, not because it was a terrible movie.
Right.
Can you give a sort of like a thumbnail on the plot of Gunpowder Milkshake?
Yeah, absolutely. So Karen Gillan's character is a hit woman, and she's been estranged from her mother, who was a hit woman before her. She winds up with a target on her back from a gang of rival assassins. And She has to reconnect with this semi-secret society of assassins that her mother was a part of. And that's where Carla and Michelle and Angela get pulled in to try and protect this young girl. That's the plot basics. But really, it's great character acting from Karen, showing the impact of being estranged from her mother and the weird way that she navigates the world, and then reconnecting with her mother, and they become like a great action duo. And then just really bonkers action choreography, weird stuff. Like there's a point where somebody somehow paralyzes Karen's arms, and she has got to figure out a way to fight off a bunch of assassins, and does it by duct taping knives onto her hands. And so she can't move her arm, but she can still like whip her body around so she can still fight them off that way. So it really has, it's not quite a spoof, but the action is violent, but a little bit silly. So it just really makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's a neat humor. Karen Gillan's character, as well as the other Sisterhood of Assassins, are very empowered. Karen Gillan's basically wearing a windbreaker jacket and like sort of comfortable jeans. They don't sexy her up. It's not all right, she's basically wearing a shirt that's mostly a bra and 6-inch high heels to do the fighting. So the leering factor isn't there. Carla Gugino, she did, what was the...
Spy Kids?
No.
I mean, she did do Spy Kids, but that's not what she...
I'm thinking of the Zack Snyder, where it was really a lot of subjective camera.
Oh, Watchmen?
Well, there was Watchmen, but it was the one where...
Sucker Punch?
Sucker Punch.
Oh, was she in that?
She was in that.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, don't. I know Zack Snyder has gotten a retroactive pass because everyone was happy about the Snyder cut of Justice League, but...
Oh, not me. I am a fan of short movies, but because there was so much conversation about it, and particularly my two friends, Josh and Graylin, prodded me to watch this just, I think, so I could share in their misery. And so I slogged my way through all 4 hours of that big dumb movie. And it's like, okay, yes, so I see the extra story that you told, but this is an incredibly self-indulgent. I'm also not a huge fan of Watchmen, the original movie, mostly in that I didn't feel like he really added anything to it.
Snyder's just, he should be a cinematographer. He can put together an interesting action sequence, and he knows how to make people look really good on camera, but I think his storytelling instincts are really suspect. They keep giving him properties he has no business doing anything with. Zack Snyder had no business with his worldview, and he's... My understanding is he's a little bit of an Ayn Rand follower, and that worldview sort of seeps into his take on Superman, and that's the absolute last person who should be entrusted with Superman is somebody with that dark of a viewpoint.
Yeah.
I didn't see the zombie movie he just did. I heard that's pretty good. Zombie heist movie with Dave Bautista that he did. But that seems like more. It's like, okay, you could have like a really dark nihilistic zombie movie that works fine.
There's always going to be an audience for that.
Right. And it meshes well. But the guy who's doing that movie isn't really the one who should be doing the Superman film.
Or the action chicks in Catholic school uniforms film either.
Yeah. It just irritates me. Zack Snyder irritates me. It just might be his dynamic doesn't mesh well with what I like in movies, but I find him maudlin, needlessly dark, and really self-indulgent.
Yeah, same.
a bit. How did you like the end of Gunpowder Milkshake? Like the final action scene that sort of took Karen Gillan character, Sam, sort of took her out of it, where she was almost a spectator in her own story. But it did give the Sisterhood of Assassins a cool sequence. And I just still can't figure out how I felt about this, because I don't always like when main characters are sort of almost removed from the story. How did that set with you?
I actually didn't mind it, because I thought that it hit the right notes thematically. Here's a character who's been a loner, estranged from her family, and has to learn to rely on others. So I thought it worked in that way. And then also visually, it was really cool to see the assassins do their thing, especially Michelle Yeoh's sequence. She's like beating up some people with some chains, and she's still got those martial arts chops. So that was pretty cool. The only complaint that I had, and not to fully spoil, but one of the characters dies, and they intimated that she was in a relationship with one of the other characters, but they really, really kind of breezed over it. I just thought they were making a point of showing that one of them was more sad than the others, that this one had died. And I just thought, if you were, first of all, I would just prefer if nobody died. But then if they are going to go that way, I don't like when I feel like a movie is queer baiting the audience. And I wish that they would be more explicit in showing that these two women are a couple.
And it's something we've talked about before. Disney has been playing a lot of really... They've been trying to have it both ways, where, oh, this movie has a gay couple, this movie has a gay character, whatever, and then it turns out all you get is in the Beauty and the Beast movie, Josh Gad dances with another guy and sort of his eyes widen a little bit when he does. It's like, that doesn't count. Yeah, it's queer baiting. And now, of course, we're in a situation where not too long from now, Lightyear is coming out, and all the back and forth of a same-sex kiss in that movie. I'm just very interested to see. It's like, well, is this just going to be another case where letting everyone know it's in there and it's stirring people up, and it gives Ben Shapiro something to talk about on his stupid show? Right. And then when you see the actual movie, it's so nothing that Disney gets the credit for having, it has the first same-sex kiss, and then it turns out, it turns out it's in the background. If you blink, you miss it, and it's two characters that nobody gives a crap about.
Kind of like in Rise of Skywalker, where it's like, yay, like random characters kiss when everybody's celebrating that everything worked out, but they have no story otherwise.
Moving on, because I know you brought some goods. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. What was it? Everything. What's the name of it again? It's another Michelle Yeoh.
Yes. It's starring Michelle Yeoh. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's out in theaters right now. I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen the preview. It's another take on the multiverse concept. From what I understand, Michelle Yeoh's character becomes aware of other versions of herself throughout the multiverse and learns to access their memories and their abilities. So it's getting fantastic reviews, both critically and from personal friends of mine. It looks like a perfect vehicle for Michelle, because she can still do the action like I mentioned, and she can be funny, which she doesn't get a ton of opportunities to do, and she can be dramatic. So it's one of my most anticipated movies of 2022.
She is fantastic, and another case of has been fantastic for decades. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. She was a Bond girl, but a great Bond girl and this was the beginning because it was the second or third Pierce Brosnan Bond film. She already had some pretty good action bona fides from she co-starred with Jackie Chan in some films. So she was a Bond girl who could kick butt and was presented in the fights as his equal.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar to or the same as Jackie Chan, would also do her own stunts as he was famous for.
And she's been a working actress, and it feels like in the last few years everyone's come back to her. I think partially she's in Star Trek Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a big thing where people realized, like, oh, okay, we sort of forgot she's fantastic.
And from a dramatic standpoint, I would add Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, and it's funny, we sort of forget Crazy Rich Asians just because the pandemic has made us forget a lot of things. That's a big movie because it sort of showed you can have a mostly Asian cast that can make, aside from the fact that it was critically successful, it's also made a ton of money because Hollywood had a real tough time consistently casting Asian leads and stuff because they just had the belief that people wouldn't come out to see those movies. Crazy Rich Asians sort of dissuaded them of that. And now, thanks to that and other factors as well, now you have movies like Shang-Chi and Snake Eyes, although Snake Eyes did not help the effort. That's helping give Michelle Yeoh a chance. It's like, hey, she's been great for a long time. She can still bring it. Let's put her front and center. So it's pretty wonderful to see her get that chance.
I have 2 recommendations if folks want to school themselves on the proof points to what you're saying about she's been great for a long time. Police Story 3, aka Super Cop. That is one of the films that she starred in alongside Jackie Chan, and it's really her coming in equal action partners, and it's a great forum for her martial arts skill, and it's also the first time that I really got to see her flex her comedy chops. As soon as the two get paired off, it really just becomes like a classic buddy cop movie. So that's a good one too. What was the other one that I was going to mention? I just watched this the other day. It's on Alamo's on-demand streaming service. It's a super weird trio of female superheroes with Michelle Yeoh. Are you familiar with it?
No, it's pretty recent?
No, it's super old.
Huh. No, I'm not sure. Going through she's done so many movies. It's sort of hard to figure out. Sung Sisters, Tai Chi Master, Holy Weapons. The Heroic Trio?
Yes, Heroic Trio, thank you.
From 1993.
I mean, this isn't exactly a recommendation but I watched it to satisfy my curiosity, and I did. But it's just it's a really bonkers movie, more focused on weirdness than on action, and just crazy mysticism, and babies die, and it's just very, very odd.
And where did you see that?
On Alamo Theaters streaming service, Alamo On Demand.
There's so many streaming services. Or one series I wanted, you mentioned when we were going back and forth about this, that I find more interesting there's some crazy behind the scenes stuff with it. So I'm curious if you're actually watching the show, Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty.
Yes, that was, so there were 2 that I wanted to talk about kind of in tandem. And so one is Winning Time, like you mentioned, and the other is Physical, and that's on Apple TV. That one is Rose Byrne starting up an aerobics empire. It's kind of a funny thing because I hate capitalism, but I often love stories about entrepreneurs. I don't know. I don't get it. But Winning Time is about a new owner taking over the Lakers in the 80s, and both of us are children of the 80s. So putting together the style of play and the aesthetics and pizzazz that are the Lakers that we knew. And it's really interesting to see those pieces put together. There are some great performances. John C. Reilly is the owner, Jerry Buss, and Quincy Isaiah is playing a young Magic Johnson, just joining the Lakers as a rookie. And it's great casting. He's got that magnetic smile, and it's, you're kind of seeing him trying to fit in and establish himself with the team. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the captain, and I didn't realize that there was such an age gap between the two, because I just think of Magic and Kareem being kind of the two pillars. But when Magic joined, he already had years under his belt and was more resistant to the changes in the play style. So it really has a lot going on from an interesting story standpoint. Now, I will say that it's pretty excessive with stylizing how they tell the story. Some of the things work. They want to give it a period feel, so they use some old time camera, and I don't know if it's just a filter or they're actually using old cameras, but there's a lot of grainy 70s, early 80s camera shots. That's all well and good. But then they break the fourth wall right away. Within the first minute of the series, John C. Reilly's character turns to the camera and just starts talking right to you. And then they early on jump the shark by having things like, you're looking at a newspaper, they're talking about someone whose photo is in the newspaper, and they say something nasty about him, and then that photo comes to life and says, "Hey, say that to my face." So I think they kind of settle down as the series goes, and there are less of those bells and whistles, but there's excesses there. And then, I'm no prude, but there's a ton of, in my opinion, unnecessary nudity. So the series starts out with John C. Reilly's character sleeping over in the Playboy Mansion, and he just strolls through the living room. There's a huge orgy happening, and it's like, we know what the Playboy Mansion is. You don't actually have to hire a room full of naked women going at it to land that idea. So it felt indulgent in that way, but it's definitely interesting to watch.
You're talking about two excesses. One with the breaking the fourth wall and all that stuff. That's very, and I know Adam McKay, the main creative force, he directed the first episode. He loves that stuff. He's done a lot of fourth wall breaking and stuff like that in some of his other work. With the excessive nudity, HBO, they just do that a lot. I remember when we had the guys from Ghostbusters Minute on and telling a story about one of their big deal shows. It might have been Game of Thrones, or it could have been Westworld. But talking about how a director who was working on one episode had a scene where there was two women who were extras who were standing in the back, and the producer said, "It's like," and I'm going to butcher this story, but I think I'm getting the point of it right.
I think it was Game of Thrones, as I recall.
Saying, it's like, "Hey, do you want those two girls in the background to take their tops off?" It's like, no, it doesn't really that doesn't work with the scene. It would just be them being topless for the sake of being topless. And they said, it's like, well, okay, but they're sort of here to do that. Like basically implying it's like, we hired those specific actresses because, and they have it like a clause in their contract or whatever it is, or they were Playboy models or however it was. Like, oh, they're here and they know that they're supposed to take their tops off if you tell them to take their tops off. I've seen shows where in other entertainment where the nudity really works. I just saw, and this is another streaming thing that I watched, I saw the Jack Reacher show on Amazon Prime. 3-4 episodes in, the two main characters who had some pretty good chemistry throughout, and there had been a little bit of will they won't they, and he's in the shower and she walks into the shower and they consummate their relationship. It was very brief and it wasn't gratuitous. She was topless because that's what you most people are shirtless when they get into the shower. It's like, okay, it sort of works, and it wasn't.
Unless you're a never nude.
Yeah, unless you're a never nude. But it wasn't gratuitous. It wasn't a bunch of close camera angles to make sure that you get, a real bird's eye view or anything like that. So it worked.
The reason that I made a point of correcting the distinction between was it Game of Thrones or was it Westworld in this story with the creepy producers is because there is a ton of nudity in Westworld, but I think that it does work because it's nudity to show the characters being vulnerable rather than just cheesecake factor, because the scenes really aren't sexy. It's just, they're just making the points about the robots in Westworld being dehumanized and how vulnerable and kind of, so yeah, I think that it serves the story point.
Yeah, if it serves a story point, and you can tell when you are taking in a piece of entertainment, whereas like, okay, well, they're showing so-and-so naked because they know if you show certain people naked, you're going to get certain eyes on the product, as opposed to showing people naked because that makes sense in the context of the story. I remember, what was it? X-Men Days of Future Past. Wolverine wakes up in the past. He gets out of bed and there's Hugh Jackman showing his rear end. They talked about that where they wanted him to be wearing boxers or whatever. And he's like, I just woke up in bed with a beautiful woman. Where I come from, you're not wearing clothes. It's like, okay. Right. And it was...
Yeah. Yeah. And on Westworld, Tandiwe Newton said that she felt much more vulnerable in scenes in the bar where she's in like a bustier, picture like Old West bar girl in like that kind of get up, because everything is like pushed up and on display, than she felt when she did the nude scenes. Clearly they were being respectful about how they did it.
I allude to this Wedding Time. The thing I found, there's been a lot of publicity around this because there was some behind the scenes rumbling. Have you kept up on this?
No, I'm not aware at all.
Adam McKay is a producer, directed the first episode. He's the creative force behind it. He directed the Anchorman films and some other stuff featuring Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Had a production company that he ran with Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell was originally cast as Jerry Buss, the John C. Reilly character, and decided that he didn't work in the role.
Yeah, I can't see that at all.
Yeah, I like Will Ferrell well enough. I think he works best in small doses, but he decided that it didn't work, so he cast John C. Reilly instead, and didn't do the cast change very well, where it turns out Will Ferrell found out he was no longer the lead in this show, not from Adam McKay.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, so now Adam McKay and Will Ferrell are no longer speaking, and they split up their production company. If anyone's really holding out for Anchorman 3, that's not going to happen for a while. Adam McKay had to make a decision for what he thought was best for the content of the show. So he realized that John C. Reilly was a better fit for the role than Will Ferrell. But dealing with egos and dealing with friendships and business relationships, sort of a thing, it was getting a lot of press, and it's still something you talked about. It's something you have to be very careful of, don't let that weird press thing overwhelm the show. Which I think they've been able to sort of sidestep that pretty well. First off, just the show's gotten some pretty good buzz. You've talked about the things that you didn't like, but overall, you're enjoying the show?
Overall, I am. Yeah.
So I want to talk about physical real quick before we move on. We had Apple TV or Apple Plus briefly, mostly because we got it for free, and Heather really wanted to watch the Tom Hanks post-apocalyptic movie because Heather's a big Tom Hanks fan. It's tough. I don't know if I want to get another streaming service, although it looks like they're getting some pretty interesting stuff. I saw the preview. Gosh, Rose Byrne is good.
Yeah, she's so good. She's vulnerable. She's funny. She's someone who is trying to hold on to their life by the skin of their teeth. And her marriage is falling apart. Her husband is kind of a jerk. And he's in this really self-involved, self-indulgent launching a political career. You can kind of see her getting sidelined because of that. And at the same time, she's becoming really addicted to exercise and is trying to channel that into creating a career out of it. So it's another 80s show. And so it's just a kind of a like slice of that era. And yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out.
I find her really interesting where she is an actress who she's very attractive, but she's also really funny. She has great drama chops. She seems to avoid girl in distress roles. She seems to avoid girlfriend roles. She'll do interesting stuff like how she did the movie with what was it, Spy with Melissa McCarthy, where she just played a great oblivious rich villain. Even her stuff in the X-Men films, she was in a couple of those. She was a little more interesting than you would naturally assume her role of damsel in distress, which could have been just a simple damsel in distress. She still somehow made that a little more interesting than it probably was going to be.
Yeah. Neighbors is great too.
Oh, with Zac Efron and
Seth Rogen.
Right. Yeah, she was great in that. She's pretty fantastic.
That was when I first realized how funny she could be.
Jarf, what else? What else are you streaming or planning on streaming?
Definitely going to check out Moon Knight. And what else? My wife and I just finished an epic rewatch of Desperate Housewives.
How was that rewatching?
I mean, it's a nice show to watch at the end of the night with some popcorn and a glass of wine. And it can be funny at times. I see so many more cracks in it now. And just the fact that very early on, it became a money train. And all they cared about was keeping that train moving. So almost every shot feels like a first take. And I'm the type of person that's constantly looking at things and it's like, yeah, that's good. Okay, we've almost got it. Like, this is what I do differently, just because that's the natural editor in me. So there's so many jokes that like because they come 80% of the way to landing, but they don't have the actors do quite what they need to make it land, but they don't care. And they're like, that's fine. We've got it. Just move on. We just got to get this episode wrapped up and there it'll be. So yeah, it's really interesting in that regard. Some of the storylines are also just really, really dumb, but that's fine because it's a soap opera show. The only real complaint I have is the overall sloppiness.
And it's easy to forget that show was massively successful, and it was a star maker. Terry Hatcher, who was a pretty well-known entity in Hollywood for playing Lois Lane, but it gave her career new life. Felicity Huffman, who had done a lot of stuff and was, I think, always respected as a good actress. It amped up her star power. Marcia Cross became a bigger deal. Nicolette Sheridan, who had been around and was doing like crappy B movies up to that point, she became a bigger deal. And Ava Longoria came out of nowhere and took everyone by surprise. And she had so much presence and charisma. Even Jesse Metcalfe, he got a couple of movies off of the success of that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Because we've been kind of working through it slowly, and he isn't around as much in the latter seasons. But if the only thing of everything that you said was true was it launching Eva Longoria's career, that alone would be worth it, because she's done so much that as a producer and making great follow-up shows and then her own film career. And she's so good throughout it that they aren't very consistent with writing her. So she'll have this really crushingly sad, dramatic storyline one week, and then it's just back to superficial Gabby, and she's so selfish the next week. But she is just able to nail whatever they ask her to do. So I'm grateful for that.
I remember listening to, and I don't know how this podcast ended up on my radar. I think I was trying to get the hosts on it on the show, but there was a Beverly Hills 90210 episode by episode recap show.
Of course.
Ava Longoria, it was like her first TV role. She was like flight attendant number 3.
Oh, really? Huh, that's funny.
The hosts of the show were saying is like, you could see they knew, the director or whoever knew there was something there, because she's just flight attendant number 3, but they made sure the camera lingered on her a bit. Like, she just had so much pop that it's like, oh, okay, there's something there. She's continued to have that, and you see so many different shows take advantage of it. She had a great run on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. She was fantastic on that. She's always engaging when she's on interview shows, and on Desperate Housewives, you should have been rooting for her character to get blown up. You know you have something special when the character that you know you should hate, you still root for.
Right.
Where did you watch Desperate Housewives?
Hulu.
Awesome. Well, Jarf, plug your pluggables. I know you have at least one cool project going on. Share with our listeners.
I've got a date to share, actually. So, Dazed and Confused 33 1/3. It's a Movies by Minute adjacent podcast. We're breaking down Dazed and Confused one song in the movie at a time. And I've already recorded an episode with you and have plans to do another. So you get Brad twice in the show. It's been a lot of fun. It's just been a vehicle to talk to folks, not just about the movie and the soundtrack, but how it relates to them, how they see themselves reflected in it or don't. And so it's just been nice nostalgia with guests and kind of coming up with their own version of the movie. And so that is going to launch May 27th with weekly episodes coming out on Friday.
Roughly when did you start recording for that?
Oh my God. It was quite some time ago. Let me see. I happen to have my spreadsheet right here.
Because, I recorded early. We're going to be recording us again soon. And it's always a great time. And it's a neat movie where you get to talk about a movie and some really cool actors who've had interesting careers, and also just get to talk music, which is always great. But one thing that always strikes me, I remember when we recorded Army of Darkness, Minute of Darkness, where we talked about Army of Darkness. We recorded that in like 2015. That was before the election, the presidential election. And we were joking about leading up is like, oh, well, things are obviously not going to go one way, although you never know. And then those episodes released after that election turned out a way we were not expecting it to go. And those jokes we made aged like milk. You got to be careful to try to keep your conversations evergreen when you do those recordings.
Yeah, and I think just due to the reflective nature of the content, the majority of our conversations have been evergreen, thankfully, because I started this in early 2021. So it's really been a labor of love and a long time coming. So that's why I'm really excited to start to share it with the world.
Very cool. We recommend everyone check that out. We will definitely share that when the time comes. Jarf, this has been awesome. It's good to have a one-on-one conversation. The curse of having success, where when you and I you were the first guest on this show for the longest time, Cosmic Geppetto was your podcasting home. You have gone on to do other stuff and really cool stuff, and you're always busy doing work for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And because of that, we haven't had as many chances to just have one-on-ones. So it's really special when you come back. And obviously, this is your home to come back whenever. So it's been really awesome to have you back.
Awesome to be back, man. Thank you so much for setting this up. And I look forward to the next time I can come on back, whether it's one-on-one or as a part of a group. And until then, I'll see you in the funny pages.
Awesome. I didn't have to set you up for it. Great job.
Hey, I'm a pro, man.
That wraps episode 260. Big thanks to Jarf Hardin. He is a co-founder of this show and was the first guest. He is the best. Also, big thanks to Katie for another great question. There are more. Next time on the Cosmic Geppetto podcast, Eric Deutsch and Molly Balin talk about the passing of Gilbert Gottfried. Till then, as Jarf already said,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at CosmicGPod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
You don't actually have to hire a room full of naked women.
He'll do some freaky stuff with a cape.
Too much Zima.
Too much Zima.